In the fall of 2019, a group of 5 friends, Rachel, Sam, Emily, Jack, and Chris, decided to take a camping trip to a place known as Devil's Peak. The location was infamous among the locals for its eerie atmosphere and numerous ghost stories, but the friends were thrill seekers and wanted to experience it for themselves. They had heard whispers of strange happenings and mysterious disappearances but brushed them off as urban legends. The hike up to Devil's Peak was challenging but beautiful. The dense forest gave way to rocky terrain as they ascended, and by late afternoon they reached the summit. The view was breathtaking, with a clear sight of the surrounding forest and the valley below. They set up their tents and prepared for the night, excited for what lay ahead. As night fell, they built a campfire and sat around it, sharing ghost stories to set the mood. Rachel, the most adventurous of the group, suggested they explore the old, abandoned cabin they had passed on their way up. The others hesitated but eventually agreed, their curiosity piqued. Armed with flashlights, they made their way to the cabin. It was a decrepit structure with broken windows and a sagging roof. The door creaked loudly as they pushed it open, revealing a dusty interior filled with old furniture and cobwebs. They split up to explore the different rooms, each feeling a growing sense of unease. In one of the rooms, Rachel found a diary on a rickety table. The entries were dated from the early 1900s and belonged to a man named Jonathan, who had once lived there. The last few entries were frantic, detailing how he had been haunted by a dark presence that lurked around the cabin at night. His final entry was unfinished, ending abruptly with a large smeared ink blot. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed through the cabin, followed by a series of rapid, heavy footsteps. The group reconvened in the main room, their flashlights flickering as if affected by an unseen force. Emily, her voice shaking, suggested they leave immediately, but as they turned to go, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Panic set in as they tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Jack and Chris attempted to force it open while the others scanned the room for another exit. The atmosphere grew colder, and an oppressive feeling filled the air. Sam, standing near a window, saw a shadowy figure moving outside. He yelled for the others to look, but by the time they turned, the figure had vanished. The tension in the cabin was palpable. Suddenly, the temperature dropped further, and they could see their breath in the cold air. An eerie, disembodied voice began to whisper unintelligible words, sending chills down their spines. Rachel, clutching the diary, felt a hand grip her shoulder. She spun around, but no one was there. Desperate to escape, they searched frantically for another way out. Chris discovered a loose floorboard and pried it up, revealing a small crawl space. One by one, they squeezed through, emerging outside the cabin. They sprinted back to their campsite, hearts pounding, the darkness around them feeling more threatening than ever. When they reached their tents, they found their belongings scattered and torn. The fire they had left burning was extinguished, and the area was eerily silent. Deciding it was too dangerous to stay, they hastily packed up and began the descent down the mountain, using their flashlights to navigate the treacherous path. The journey back was harrowing. Strange noises followed them, and several times they caught glimpses of shadowy figures flitting between the trees. By the time they reached the base, the first light of dawn was breaking. Exhausted and terrified, they drove away, vowing never to return. Back in town, Rachel researched more about Devil's Peak and discovered a series of disappearances and deaths linked to the area, all with similar descriptions of a dark presence. The cabin they had explored was notorious for being the epicenter of these occurrences. The friends rarely spoke of the incident, but the memory of that night haunted them. The eerie whispers, the oppressive cold, and the shadowy figure remained vivid in their minds, a reminder of their brush with the supernatural. Devil's Peak had left its mark on them, a chilling testament to the horrors that lurk just beyond the veil of the ordinary. In the summer of 2018, 4 college friends, Anna, Ben, Claire, and David, decided to go on a camping trip to Pine Hollow, a remote forest known for its dense trees and serene environment. They had heard rumors of strange occurrences, but dismissed them as local folklore, eager to escape the pressures of their final exams and enjoy a weekend in nature. They arrived at Pine Hollow on a bright Saturday morning, the sun shining through the thick canopy of trees. They found a perfect spot by a small clearing near a tranquil stream and set up the clear tents. The day was filled with laughter, hiking, and swimming in the cool waters of the stream. As dusk fell, they built a campfire and sat around it, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. The forest was alive with the sounds of nature, the chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. As night deepened, they decided to call it a day and retreated to their tents. Around midnight, Anna was awakened by a strange noise. At first, she thought it was an animal, but the sound grew louder and more distinct. It was a faint, high-pitched scream, echoing through the trees. She nudged Ben awake and whispered about the noise. He listened intently, and soon they both heard it again. Ben decided to wake Claire and David, and the four of them huddled together, listening to the unsettling sound. The screams were intermittent, coming from different directions, making it hard to pinpoint the source. The eerie atmosphere was thick with fear and uncertainty. Determined to find out what was causing the noise, they grabbed their flashlights and ventured into the forest. The further they went, the louder the screams became. They stumbled upon an old, overgrown trail and followed it, hoping it would lead them to the source. After what felt like an eternity, they reached an abandoned campsite. The remains of a tent lay in tatters, and scattered around were old camping gear and personal belongings. The air was thick with an unexplainable dread. Claire found a journal half buried in the dirt and picked it up. The entries were dated back to the summer of 2008 and belonged to a man named Mark. As they read through the journal, their hearts pounded with fear. Mark had written about hearing strange screams and feeling watched. His last entry described an overwhelming sense of terror and ended abruptly. Suddenly, the forest grew silent. The screams stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence. David suggested they leave immediately, but as they turned to go, they saw shadowy figures surrounding their flashlights. Panic set in, and they ran back toward their campsite, their flashlights flickering and casting eerie shadows on the trees. The figures seemed to follow them, keeping pace but never getting too close. When they finally reached their campsite, they found it in disarray. Their tents were slashed, and their belongings were strewn everywhere. The campfire, which they had left burning, was extinguished, and the darkness felt more menacing than ever. Terrified, they packed up their remaining gear and made their way back to their car. The drive back to civilization was filled with silence, each of them lost in their thoughts, trying to process what had happened. Anna later researched Pine Hollow and discovered that several campers had gone missing over the years, with some locals believing the forest was haunted by the spirits of those lost. The mysterious screams and shadowy figures remained unexplained, leaving them with a chilling reminder of their encounter with the unknown. The friends never returned to Pine Hollow. Their camping trip turned nightmare, becoming a story they rarely spoke of but would never forget. The silent screams of Pine Hollow had left an indelible mark on their lives, a haunting memory of the terror that lurks in the most unexpected places.